Folks, the hour of 7:30 has arrived, and actually we're 1 minute late. I'd like to call to order this business meeting of District 116 for March 13th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Member Hall.
Here.
Member Patton.
Here.
Member Plosky.
Here.
Member Fisher is here. Vice President Rollins-Gay. Here. And President Dimmitt.
Here. We do have a quorum present. Are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to this evening's agenda?
Yes, at your request, we pulled 10.01, and we'll move that administrative report on school improvement plans to another meeting.
Okay. And that's to make room for an exec session after this evening's meeting regarding performance of a specific employee. There'll be no action item after the exec session. So there are no further additions or corrections to this evening's agenda? All right, citizen statements. No. Yeah, citizen statements this evening will begin with Matt Stark, and well, let me first, Matt, go ahead and take a seat. But if you wish to address the board this evening, please fill out a goldenrod sheet and turn it into our recording secretary, Lori Johnson. And I want to remind everybody that it's a 5-minute maximum, and tonight we do have a long agenda, and so we're asking everyone to please maintain that 5-minute limit. And I will announce who's on deck so that we can make the transition from one speaker to the next as quickly as possible. So when you do get up here, do give your full name, because I may only use your first name since I know quite a few of you. So, Matt?
I'm Matthew Stark, principal of Urbana High School. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Board of Education. I have a tremendous respect for all of you, as well as my colleagues and staff that I work with every day. I recognize that there are a lot of strong feelings this past week, and I have some too. I need to start by talking about where I am. As a staff, we have been looking at data for the past few years. Our frustration has continued to grow when we see things not getting better. Little changes here and there within a system have not improved things, and in fact, some things have continued to get worse. We have an overrepresentation of students of color in discipline and an underrepresentation in academic success. This is not acceptable, and changes to our system and additional supports are necessary to help us meet our students' needs. My delivery of our plan on Monday, March 5th to the staff was not done well, and I'm sorry about that. I failed to provide enough clarity about our process, previous discussions, and strong rationale for the decision to eliminate the deans and help everyone understand and buy in. I'm owning that. After watching the continued exchanges regarding this change, I've become deeply disappointed and troubled about how quickly our dialogue and discourse devolved into anger and mistrust. In handling this situation, we have inadvertently and otherwise stoked the fears and anxieties of our students and our community. Several comments made by people I value have been extremely insensitive and frankly, some of them racist. I know we owe it to all 1,200 plus students that walk through our doors to do the right by them, specifically to how we conduct ourselves as professionals and leaders for equity, not just in the buildings. There should not be a student upset due to staff members' actions regarding this change. At yesterday's staff meeting, I stated unequivocally that I refuse to apologize one more time because of a comment or statement that made by someone which is remotely disparaging. And after that, encouraged our staff to share their ideas and thoughts about moving forward. I care deeply about our students and our community. I hope we can truly listen to each other and give this a chance, because we do need change. While the dean position will be eliminated, we're not actually losing support. The system is evolving, and will be more help and new roles to help us get where we need to be for our kids. Our plan includes positions that build on the strengths and skills that make up the people in the current dean roles invaluable. We are really wanting to find ways to help students succeed and strengthen positive relationships that they already have. I believe in this change. We have brilliant and dedicated people that work throughout our schools who are committed to making this work. This transition is an amazing opportunity to create a system that can help our students succeed. We need to have an urgency that reflects our mission of supporting all students. Over the past few days, a number of students and staff have talked to me about ideas and thoughts regarding what we need to do to make our school more responsive to our students. If the biggest concern is miscommunication, that should not be a factor in postponing efforts to better support our students. Let's fix it and move on. Some have suggested we wait a year. However, this delays the issue. Students of color continue to be impacted, and the students we are failing is a reason we can't wait. We already have waited too long. Big problems require big changes. Within this change, some people immediately jump to school safety. When negative and disruptive things happen, there is still a response team. The number one priority is safety of our students and our staff. When those things happen, people respond, and we'll have more people responding now. As we have more staff, we'll have more people to build positive relationships with more people than what we have now. We will have a safer and more secure learning environment. I am truly sorry for my role in poorly communicating this plan to my staff. I apologize to you, the families, and most importantly, our students for the disruption this has caused. I'm excited about the change and hope we can move forward with the interest of all our students in mind, particularly the ones that are often marginalized. I am committed to leading a school where student success or outcomes are not predictable by race. Thank you.
And I forgot to say who was on deck. So, Abram, you're next, and then Jerry Moreland next after that.
Thanks for this opportunity. Well, I'm just going to get to the point.
Give your full name, Abram.
I'm Abram Washington. So I'm all for this new plan. I'm all for the dean name to get taken away because the dean's name seem overpowering, or it implies power. You should make this new position about a connection or a relationship for this new generation. No one knows how this is all going to end up because no one knows the future. This is about students, not teachers. So I don't know why the teachers are getting mad about this. This is all about this new student generation. Thanks.
Jerry, and then Brianna Morton.
My name is Jerry Moreland. I'm a student relations supervisor at UHS. The last time I spoke before the Board of Education was in the 1990s on behalf of the students at King School with regard to the conditions there, with a few of you members and staff present. Tonight I speak on behalf of the students at UHS. When and if this resolution to RIF the deans is passed, I'd like to offer some advice. There are no compliments for the lack of transparency with staff, but perhaps in this time of transition, one of you may want to come from behind the curtain and speak formally to our students and parents. My job offers me opportunity to establish great rapport with the students of UHS. I truly love it there. I've already heard 2 students say, I don't care if they send me to my dean, they're leaving anyway. Most of us knows what sometimes occurs with regard to the behavior of some young people when there's chaos. Recently, I've heard it said that kids adapt better than adults, but I think that kind of adaptability comes with being dependent. If you fail to answer any questions our students or their parents may have as to why the period of adapting is but for a short term, then the issue may become something else, much like a tear in a wound. If you're anticipating long-term and even short-term success, then what is necessary is formal, transparent, and honest communication with our students and their parents before the fall of 2018. Thank you.
Brianna, and then Amy Felty.
Good evening. It's great to see you all again. I am Brianna Morton. I'm at Urbana High School. The disproportionate representation of students of color in our discipline statistics is staggering. The present truth is that students of color are more likely to earn a referral and more likely to earn a suspension within our schools. Students of color are facing an educational experience that is far less than an ideal one while under our watch. It's so much more than discipline, though. It's so much wider than deans versus no deans, and it's so much deeper than an "I'm sorry for how we laid this out" can remedy. Here's what I'm seeing. Central office is proposing to take a big old swing of the structure level to shake things up and address a major issue in a major way. And I can see how it makes sense. Staffing, job descriptions, FTEs, they're all controllable factors. So let's control them. It's logical on a graph to show a clear line where this intervention starts and how the discipline data will just cleanly drop off after this point. It's going to make a pretty awesome PowerPoint slide. My counterpoint is that discipline is not as entirely structural as this major restructuring implies. The plan to eliminate deans and the dean structure and bring in specialist structures does not fully address the other levers: sample, strategies, standards, and self. Why is it so important, or what is so important about eliminating dean positions as a pillar of this restructuring? Why is that non-negotiable? Some important self-lever moments could lead to reduced referrals if we simply consider restructuring our own terminology. What if our thoughts about discipline were replaced with thoughts about opportunities to enter into restoration? What if we didn't compare students of color to white demographics and rather compared all students to one? And I can hear your thought bubbles already. This is a yes and kind of situation. We can restructure and we can address ourselves and our terminology. We can knock ourselves out with making this our own. So I ask again, what is so important about eliminating dean positions as a pillar of this restructuring? Why is it non-negotiable? There are effective strategies being utilized by our deans. Another lever in this case that has clearly been acknowledged and is still being eliminated. In special education, we often track behaviors and then how they respond to interventions. It is commonly understood that if a behavior has improved, that's great, but consideration should be given to whether or not the maintenance of an improved state is dependent upon the nature and intensity of the intervention. We need to be given time to consider this at our schools. What if the nature and intensity of the strategies that our deans are providing is the very structure that is maintaining the improvements we have made? To change interventions at this point without taking time to consider would be unwise. We cannot get this wrong. And it seems we already have, because last Monday's great imposition was flawed. I appreciate the board's decision to hold off on this vote. I noticed calmness coming over my coworkers after they write letters and talk to board members. Thank you. I love how together I am with my union and my building administration. I admit a renewed sense of urgency and purpose as a mere special education teacher at Urbana High School, but I also find myself questioning if my urgency and my purpose is going to be best utilized in these schools. So please, let us get to a point where we can have honestly collaborative dialogues about why students of color are not achieving their own personal greatness in our schools. This is not about our deans. This is not about a poorly laid plan. This is about getting it right for our students and getting it right together. 2 steps back is just part of this dance. Thank you.
Amy, and then Matt Murray.
Thank you. I'm Amy Felty from Champaign, from the community. I wanted to say that I'm heartened at a workshop that I attended last Saturday given by Karen Sims, one of our community trauma trainers. Some of the things that she explains about trauma are that it manifests itself in communities through violence and through making learning more difficult for students. And we've been studying the learning process, particularly with her, because we're in a group called Neighborhood Champions, and we're working with children and youth and adults across the community. Karen mentioned at the workshop that the state of Colorado is developing statewide trauma-informed schools. And they have moved from punitive measures of disciplining students to trauma-informed training in ways that are producing really good results. You may already be more aware of that research than I am. The decision that moved the state of Colorado was the Columbine incident and 3 other mass shootings. And the people in Colorado decided as a majority to change the way they were acting. They knew they had to respond differently through what was happening. So I think that there's a time for us when we trust in our institutions and our systems, and there's a time to trust in the people in those institutions. And when a school system is working well and students are all succeeding, they're progressing, they're happy, there's a uniform, although individual, progress, that's fine. But when it's not the case, we have to examine what we're doing to see what isn't working. Because our kids are our kids, and they're all fine, and they all have a chance to progress when they can. In Champaign and Urbana, both, we know that our educational systems aren't serving all of our students well. Our students are capable, but something holds some of them back. Whatever that something is, we have to understand and address it before we can change it. In Colorado, the state decided that it would address the roots of violence, anger, frustration through trauma-informed schools. And they're looking at this endeavor as worthy of their time. They're relearning, they're using their energy, and they're restating their values. They want all families and all students involved. In our communities here in Champaign-Urbana, we can do the same. It's always embarrassing to say our system isn't working. But it isn't. It's true. The data shows it. And people in our own community who've been harmed by the public school system in Champaign-Urbana have been able to state what it is that has harmed them. We cannot, in good conscience, ignore this truth. Reframing our practices and our relationships in school settings to help all students is probably the most difficult task that I, as a former teacher, retired administrator, can imagine. But it is noble work, actually noble work, that we as humans can undertake. So in Urbana, if we say, let's try the practices of restorative justice to engage all of our students, especially those who are not succeeding, and to identify the blocks to their education, we can examine the stresses and the needs that operate on them. I commend this system of Urbana with its school board and its teachers and its staff and its students and its families and all the people in it for taking on this difficult task. With time and effort, a few years down the road, we will see results that we haven't seen before. I recently met with 2 of your new young staff members who are counselors who've been hired in this position of counseling. I was impressed with their maturity and their wisdom. And I think that you've added some valuable members to your staff. So this is a bold move, but it's not a big leap. It's the kind of idea whose time has come. It's the next step. And I think that you're wise in taking this step and including people in the consultation of it. Thank you.
Matt and then Jenna Finch.
Hi, good evening. My name is Matthew Murray. I'm a resident of Urbana for about 25 years. I've worked at the Urbana High School Library. This is my 15th year. I'm going to be very brief. I'm just going to ask, it was a little unclear to me what the decision of the board is going to be moving forward on the dean elimination plan. And what I'm hoping is that the board will clarify that, make it very clear. I think that you should issue a statement on when the board will vote to approve or turn down or modify the dean elimination plan that central office has handed down. That would really help to know what because I heard a statement saying the dean position will be eliminated. And it's unclear to me if that's the case, and I hope the board will act quickly and be clear with the public. So thank you.
Jenna and then Dr. Elaine.
My name is Jenna Finch. I'm a teacher at UHS. A blog published by the Race Matters Institute defined racial equity this way. Racial equity results when you cannot predict advantage or disadvantage by race. The difference between equality and equity is not a word game. It matters deeply for how we invest precious societal resources in our young people, families, and communities. The writer went on to point out that the route to achieving equity will not be accomplished through treating everyone equally. It will be achieved by treating everyone equitably or justly according to their circumstances. I understand the data the district has analyzed and also the pride you take in being a data-driven school district. What the data shows is, undeniably, a negative ongoing trend. But statistics is the only math course I ever aced. Being hardwired for words, math that actually spells out words rather than creating those exasperated letter, parentheses, symbol, string thingies, that works for me. Statistics applies mathematics to measuring words that in turn represent groups of people, and they in turn have context, often referred to as lives. They have circumstances. The element of selection of what data to include becomes an essential part of the interpretive analysis. I know the data you use is accurate and dismaying. It is also selective and limited. While I may not get why leaving out the parentheses around 2xy is such a big deal in the world of algebra, I see clearly the narrowness of perspective imposed by too few columns of numbers. But time, when those involved are living, breathing teenagers, should not be a matter of comparing 2012 to 2017, but rather comparing the circumstances, the commonalities of all those students from 2012, or whenever this data accumulation began, through the present. God knows race is an overwhelming circumstance in these United States, but so too are poverty, gender, single parent or no parent homes, lack of health care, inadequate diets, early exposure to violence and insecurity, ethnicity, including African immigrants and Black Hispanics, and so sadly, so much more. In the data digs we look at, time is the year-by-year analysis of discipline referrals and suspensions, graduation and failure rates, participation in weighted and advanced placement classes. We measure these by grade level: African American, white, Latino, Asian, and Native American. Those looking at the data bring up the negative trend in attendance every year. It has not received the same sort of attention, but logic suggests that it shares the same root causes. Those would be life circumstances as the referrals. We are being asked to see these young African American youngsters, mostly young men, as people, as if we did not. How profoundly, unforgivably insulting. The data does not incorporate their humanity. The UHS teachers, support staff, aides, coaches, and everyone else who touches their lives day after day. We see them. We learn about their circumstances, and we do what we can do to mitigate their difficulties, to encourage them to overcome, and to help them to do so. Look at these lost children from their beginning, not the start of their high school years. How many of them were in early childhood classes where they already acted out? How many of them have been grouped as underprepared since they entered the school system? I am not asking that additional support staff educated in the social and emotional needs of adolescents are not desperately needed. How could I, with school violence on the tip of everyone's tongues and the safety of our future on the edge of a precipice. But get real. This is not on UHS, and it is not on the deans, who you never shadowed, never consulted. Nor did you inquire of any other shareholders, another equity link. What is the worth of your equity in this district, and what is ours as teachers? Or that of parents? Did you consult them? How about students? Students. By all means, provide UHS with more support to help those most in need of help. Then add transition professionals all the way back to kindergarten. Ungroup this harshly tested group of kids. Wrap them in love and send them forward to success. But do not think you are being innovative or daring or cutting edge by breaking trust and worse with those who serve the students directly. We need our deans, and we need one another, and we need your support, not your ill thought out mandates. I said I was a word person. I said I was a word person, and so I am. Do you know the root of the word communicate? It's Latin, comunicare. Back when, apparently, it meant to share. What happened?
Elaine, and then Ryan Hughes.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Elaine Spungen. I'm part of a team of people helping the district shift to restorative practices in the past couple of years. This district has also been my home for the past 14 years. Our son is at the high school, and our daughter will go to UMS next year. We support the core values of this district and care deeply about the students and staff of USD 116. For this reason, I want to talk to you today about what I see as the challenges, some of the challenges of powerful change and genuine collaboration. I've been working with issues of equity, diversity, conflict, and communication for more than 2 decades. Last year, I left a comfortable and well-respected position as a director at the university, and originally I joined and started doing restorative justice in order to contribute to what I believe is one of the most pressing challenges of our generation: the funneling of young people of color from our traditional school discipline systems into our nation's prison systems. In other words, I came to this work because of my deep concern that traditional school discipline and evaluation systems disproportionately affect students of color and help to create a spiral of disconnection and hopelessness that devastates our communities and our relationships with each other. For this reason, I have been working with district leadership, staff, and students to shift both our mindset and our practices. We've been working together to shift towards a system that emphasizes shared accountability, mutual understanding, and looks at the roots at our shared underlying values and needs. With that goal in mind, over the past week, I've been listening for our shared underlying needs and values regarding the move to restructure, and here's some of what I'm hearing, not all. From district leadership, I hear a deep desire to have students of color matter, to have every child feel included, safe, wanted, and cherished in our school community. And I'm hearing the sense, in the words of Dr. King, of the fierce urgency of now, which demands vigorous and positive action. I see both the need and the urgency shared by many faculty, staff, and parents in this district, and I resonate fully with these values. I also hear the underlying need of many faculty and staff members to be included in meaningful and authentic ways in the solution to this urgent problem. Restorative practices are built on the values of voice, collaboration, and truth-telling. I agree that this is also critical. I believe that people on the ground are our best allies in any change, and that skeptics provide us with valuable input about holes in our plans. I hear district leadership acknowledging the importance of collaboration as we move forward together. Though challenging, this moment is a rare opportunity. By focusing on our shared values, we can work together to address the roots of what ails us. I think the risk is that we lose courage and hope and inadvertently co-create either token change or token collaboration. Powerful change takes courage. So does genuine collaboration. I hope that together we find a way to prioritize both without losing sight of either.
Ryan, and then Joe and Shauna and Lupe.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Hughes. I'm an Urbana resident. I served on the Champaign County Racial Justice Task Force, which began in 2016 and ended this past fall. We've come before the school district board before to talk about our findings over that time period. One of the areas we decided to investigate was juvenile justice in that system because of the beginning interaction with juveniles and youth with the criminal justice system and how that can begin. We interviewed over 100 people in the community, and one of the main topics that often came up was the education system and the racial disparities within our education system. Because of this, one of our recommendations to the county board specifically addresses school discipline systems and calls for the integration of racial justice and restorative practices. Restorative justice and restorative practices. This integration, bringing in restorative justice and practices to our schools, requires radical change. We spoke, again, as I said, with the district about a month ago about these changes that need to happen, and I'm grateful and excited that the school board is listening to the Racial Justice Task Force, taking our recommendations and turning them into actions so that we can reduce and eliminate racial disparities within our schools and communities. Thank you.
And after this panel, Carolyn Randolph.
So we decided, my name is Joe Wiemelt. I am a district employee and member of the Racial Equity Leadership Team and a parent of 2 kids in Urbana schools. And we decided to do this jointly as members of the district.
I'm Guadalupe Ricconi. I'm also a member of the District Racial Equity Leadership Team and Director of Elementary Bilingual Programs.
And I'm Shauna Shear. I am the assistant principal at the middle school and also the parent of a 4th grader at Dr. Williams. As members of the District Equity Leadership Team, we view our role and our voice as critical when leading for racial equity, particularly as it relates to issues of systemic racial oppression and privilege across our school system. Thus, we believe it is critical that we speak up and act whenever and wherever possible to lead for racial equity in USD 116. The recent decision to transform the disciplinary system at UMS and UHS has been met with major resistance. The resistance has come from concerns related to the process of communication and decision-making, as well as concerns with the change itself. We acknowledge that the process could have been handled differently. We're not here to minimize or ignore our colleagues' feelings related to the process. However, we believe that flaws in a process should not detract from the necessity of the decision or the reasons for the decision. A critical look at our outcomes, historically and presently, justifies the necessity of restructuring our current system. This is an incredible opportunity to re-envision our school structures and supports from an equity lens, one that could meet students' needs in a way we are unable to do with our current structure.
The need for restructuring is not a critique of any individual or colleague's performance. Rather, this is a critique of our system. Our current structure reproduces racial inequities and does not meet the needs of the majority of our students. If we are serious about being here for students' well-being, then we must commit to envisioning a new system grounded in restorative practices, student engagement, and racial equity. We must be proactive in addressing students' needs rather than reactive to their struggles. Over the course of the past few years, colleagues across the district continuously ask us when we are going to do something and take action to dismantle inequitable practices and lead for racial equity. Therefore, we ask our colleagues, district administration, and the Board of Education to recognize this change, restructuring the discipline system for our secondary students as equity in action, and commit to coming together to make this a reality.
And lastly, we believe we can build a better system with the help of everyone in this room, with help everyone across the system, and with effective communication and collaboration as we move forward. As equity leaders, we are committed to making sure that those next steps are collaborative, that they're focused on developing an effective plan for implementation. We ask the Board of Education, district administration, faculty, staff, and the broader community to work collaboratively to build a structure that is racially equitable and meets the needs of our students. We're going to end with a quote that we've used recently in some of our racial equity sessions by Ronald Edmonds, who's a former educator and pioneer of the effective schools research in response to the Coleman reports of the 80s. We can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully teach all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to do that. Whether or not we do it must finally depend on how we feel about the fact that we haven't so far. Thank you.
Carolyn, and followed by Tracy Palmer.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Randolph. I'm with the U of I as well as the Racial Justice Task Force that presented information on our report, our findings on racial disparities. Particularly, I wanted to focus on the area of school discipline, where we saw numbers that were on trend with what's happening nationally and, quite frankly, abysmal. But I believe that restorative practices and finding ways to retool and retrain your faculty and staff is vitally important. The work that you're doing actually reminds me of an article that I recently read about National Geographic, where they were asked to do a cover story on race. And the person who was in charge, the editor-in-chief, decided to talk about the racial practices of National Geographic to make that very transparent, to be honest and say that, yes, we were involved in practices that contributed to racism and contributed to divisions within our company as well as divisions in the world by representing certain bodies and groups in a particular light. And so I think that that's vitally important that you all are centering the issue of race and racial equity and having that conversation publicly. And so as you're examining your school practices and your district-wide policies, I think it's important to continue to pinpoint areas of inequity and to address them swiftly. How you retool your faculty and staff is going to make all the difference in the world. So continue to do what you're doing, continue having these conversations and allowing them to be addressed.
Tracy Palmer, followed by Susan Vargas Shelton.
Hi, my name is Tracy Palmer. I'm a parent, and I would like to start by saying that Urbana School District has been wonderful for my family. I have 4 kids, 1 still in high school. As far as the deans, I think that I would never say that they're the whole problem. I do think that there's a negativity attached to the deans, especially in the black community. I've talked to many parents, many children. Of course, I just said I have 4. I would never say that we should get rid of them, but if we can't get rid of the negativity connected to them, then maybe that is the situation we would have to deal with. I think that when I have a problem or one of my children had a problem, I never felt comfortable going to the deans. I've always went to Mr. Stark or Janice Mitchell, someone like that. And I think that we should be able to go to the deans. It shouldn't be such negative. It should be more helpful, you know, trying to get to the bottom of it, trying to figure out a solution, a positive solution. And I just don't think we're there. I don't understand why that is. I think Mr. Stark and Janice Mitchell are very positive people. So why they're not feeding off of that, I don't understand. But so I think, let me look at my notes, make sure. And so my last son has some special needs. He has a caseworker. And I noticed that the caseworkers and the deans do not seem, in my situation, to work together. That I truly don't understand, because if the dean calls my son down, the case manager should be there, or I should be there, Mr. Stark should be there. Communication is his issue, and that's not dealt with. He's, dealing with the dean. He's nervous about that. He clams down. He won't talk, and if his case manager was there, I think it would help. I've said that many times, and I just think that the school in general, everybody needs to work together. It just feels like, to me, the deans are over here and everybody else is over here. And so I just think that really needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Susan, followed by Mick Wolf.
Hi, my name is Susan Vargas Sheltra, and I have a kindergartner in the dual language program at Dr. Williams. I know that this is not the hot topic of the evening so far, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about how thrilled I am with her experience so far in the program. After less than a year, she is already more confident speaking Spanish, and particularly pronouncing Spanish, than her brother, who has taken years of high school Spanish. Which I think emphasizes that that is the age to learn another language. I am also thrilled that she is able to already communicate better. She's starting to be able to communicate better with her non-English speaking grandmother. And she is also having the opportunity for a variety of cultural experiences that expose her to the idea that not everyone comes to life with the same assumptions or with the same circumstances. And I think that that is tremendously beneficial for her now and in the future. I'm so excited that she has the opportunity to be taught not just by teachers, but by her Spanish-speaking peers, which I think is fantastic. And I think that this is an opportunity that would be wonderful for more children to have. Thank you.
Mick, and then Sarah Balgoyan. If I mispronounced that, I'm sorry.
I've had a long day, so I'll try to be as cohesive as I can with some thoughts. Well, I'm Mick Wolf. I'm a longtime member of the community. And amongst other work, I've subbed part-time over the last 4 years in the Urbana School District. And my son had attended public school through his graduation at UHS. Prior to that time, I volunteered for 4 years in the parent enrichment program at UMS. Admittedly, I, as so many others, are surprised to see the decision, or not decision, but this process to replace the deans without knowing the details of the plan that I believe is proposed to be implemented potentially by the fall of 2018. I don't want to presume anything at all, as I'm completely agnostic. I simply don't know the goals, although I've just heard a few thoughts by some members of the Racial Equity Task Force. I don't know what the concerns, the logistics beyond, working with the children. We're concerned about biases, et cetera, as everyone should be. But I'm in the dark as to the hows and whys from the process to not knowing what the plan is for the replacement based on just the News Gazette articles that I'd seen. I don't know if there's a place to review the plan. I was looking on the USD website. I don't know yet. But in any event, I give the authors of the plan and those on the task force the benefit of the doubt to review and propose good practices with good intent. I'm not ascribing anything to the motivations, but at the same time, I wonder about certain things that are very, very basic, like communication, collaboration, clarity, confidence in a process, confidence with the employer-employee situation. I hear about collaboration tonight and working together, but I'm wondering about where that's been so far with the employees, the deans, the teachers. And I have a few questions. Was there a process whereby the deans were consulted about what they needed from the district to do their jobs as frontline workers in terms of any extra support? Was there a process whereby the teachers were consulted with in terms of what they needed or thought would be helpful to the students? Were the deans apprised of the concerns, context, and potential changes in advance and given an opportunity to respond to the administration's and the board's considerations and concerns? Was there any consideration of the possibility of incorporating some of the restorative concepts into training for the deans themselves to carry out? Are the changes based upon racial equity concerns in data due to a disproportionate number of minority students facing disciplinary, academic? There we go. Sorry about that. Other life challenges. And are students consistently being called out for behaviors unfairly with a tendency based upon demographics? Is it a specific personnel issue? If so, is this then painting a broad brush by eliminating the whole staff with a new approach? You know, I'm hoping that the impression is not that the Urbana School District deans are all relegated to, if not being cast as either outright potentially racist or at the very least biased along with many teachers. Well, perhaps that's one aspect to address with discussion, training, education, awareness, instead of often...
You turned it off.
I don't know what's going on there. You know, to be more substantive, pragmatic modifications can be helpful along with interventions, progress reports, and updates. Data can be interpreted, formatted, and morphed into most anything that people want to use it for in terms of confirmation bias, self-fulfilling prophecies, or rationalizations and justifications to take specific actions, even expeditiously. And that's one of my concerns about the actual context. Of course, there are actual experiences and instances, then of course those should be addressed. But is getting rid of the deans wholesale simply because the district may lean toward the data research, what other districts are doing that sound very positive, but to be mindful that in doing the right thing and making adjustments, that the deans, do they truly equal only negative consequences? Do the deans equal being bad, therefore the deans equal the problem only, and they must be gotten rid of and replaced? There's so many variables, and in trying to make up for so many disadvantages, historically, socioeconomically, and many other issues of focus, academics, discipline, learning issues, and many other basics that we have in our society, everyone wants to see these issues addressed. But I can say that I've watched the deans operate at both UMS and UHS over the last 4 years of subbing, and while diffusing situations and backing the teachers where they're allowed to do so is helpful, I realize there's limitations. I've seen them work with the students, be positive, have relationships, rapport, talk straight, support, and encourage the kids. Sometimes it's oil and water. It's just not going to be a good mix, as it may not be with any two individuals or potentially families. I know one of the people presenting tonight spoke about her specific situation, and I hope that she is able to find a better route. I've had a number of students, when I've substituted, actually ask to see their deans due to whatever it is that they're contending with in seeking their support, as many of the students have real relationships with them. So as I say, not all personalities click, but I've seen their efforts. They're dedicated frontline workers, and I've seen them in action over the years. And, you know, we hope that they deserve at least the basic respect for their effort, including the option or opportunity to incorporate new ways, new ideas, techniques that have been talked about, and approaches. Ongoing training and learning and awareness is key for all of us. I mean, unless they're all up for being reassigned, if that's what they're all for, through some discussions about it, should they not be, if they're willing, I hope they're given an opportunity to be a part of a new philosophy while taking into account their thoughts. Talk about collaboration and experiences on pragmatic approaches, okay, as the dedicated veterans on the front lines. So I hope that you'll be mindful also from a labor standpoint of inclusiveness, because the repercussions that go out when people are not included in these kinds of things can be very, very detrimental, not just to those specific individuals, but you know, to the staff, to teachers, and some of the students perhaps, because it's one of great uncertainty. We've all been in cases, I'll just conclude with this, where we've not been collaborated with in our jobs, and nobody likes it. So I wonder, they've been interviewed, surveyed, included. I just think it's a really important thing to do. And is there any reason that these approaches or techniques, upon discussing it with them, could not be incorporated? Anyway, I wish you well, and thank you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. And then Araceli Arellano, if I said that right, I hope. Next.
Hi guys, I'm Sarah Balgoyan, and I was here a couple months ago presenting on the Racial Justice Task Force findings, which several other people have reviewed, so I'm not going to go there, but I do want to first say I'm a graduate of Urbana High School 20 plus years ago, but my dean, Miss Polly Washington, was a favorite of mine, and I look back on that, and it's because of the relationships that we had, right? She built relationships with me and other students, both in a positive way, when, you know, not just because we were sent down to her office, but in other ways throughout the school day and the years that we were there. And that brings me to the key element of restorative practices, which is relationships. So I want to just, the other part of my spiel here is coming from a restorative justice perspective as an executive director of a nonprofit that does this all over the state. The whole school approach for restorative practices takes 3 to 5 years to even get started and going. So I want you to be patient. There are a lot of models out there that other school districts across the US have used, and most of those start with staff and parent and family engagement. They do not start with student discipline, because the relationship piece is so important, and it's a mindset shift. It's about doing things with each other rather than to or for. So there's a social discipline window that really talks about having high control and order, right? We need social norms and values and rules, but also having high support and engagement and encouragement. And together those things we're doing stuff to things with each other. And that's from preventative, proactive, all the way through intervention, reentry, et cetera. Restorative practices really needs to be a part of everything, the building, the people, the processes, the structures. It needs to include students, staff, parents, the community, everything from pre-K through high school. The processes around community engagement, communication with the staff, et cetera, all needs to be focused in on the relationship piece, the shared values that we have together. And how in relationships, sometimes there's conflict, and then we have practices for that as well. Some of the recommendations that I have as you move forward in this is to think about all the assets that you have in this community. You have a lot of restorative practitioners, Elaine and Mikhail and others, but all the staff that's been trained, and many others throughout the community, families and parents. And they should be helping you facilitate some of the dialogue that you're having around this with staff. Because facilitation, the goal of a facilitator in a restorative practice is to help level the playing field for power and to give equal voice to all, so that everybody feels heard and everybody understands what's being said. We have chances and opportunities to do that. I think that as you move forward on this, the deep work really needs to start now and continue through the summer and the beginning of the year, with this being a focus. Students, staff, parents, et cetera, will need to be engaged in that, solely thinking about how are we going to be in relationship with one another as we move forward in this way. If you dive right into a school year without this being the focus, it won't be effective. Garden Hills in Champaign, several years ago, took 2 weeks of the first 2 weeks of their school year to solely focus on building relationships in their school community. It was a chance that they took because they weren't sure, like, how's this going to affect the academics? But because they built strong relationships in their classrooms and in their school community, they were able to excel then in their academics. So I'd really like you to think about how would you do this deep work in schools with the student voice and the community as the focus. That would include a lot of classroom level and school level, establishment of values. And when you get to a place in restorative practices of people talking about their own values, they align, and they often give opportunity for conversation around them. So I can understand what you mean is respect, what you think respect is. We can come to some shared agreement on that and understanding. Obviously, I think transparency around the plan gives the benefit to everybody. And then I'd also like to really encourage you to think about the supports and things you're going to put in place to evaluate the data ongoing, like on the spot, and make those changes as needed. If in month 2 something is not going great, like have some supports in place to be able to take that and flip it. Don't wait a full school year or 2 to get to a point. I think you'll have to have some extra support staff or community support in order to do that. And I just would like to encourage you to do that, because it is courageous and difficult to make those big changes. And a lot of my work, it's focused on changing the justice system. Again, another big structural system that we can't imagine our lives without, right? So it's hard to think about that, but little by little, and with the right supports for everybody involved, I think that you can make good changes.
Araceli? Okay. And then Bridget is on deck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Araceli Arellano, and I have 2 kids, and they go to dual program. To me, as a parent, it is really, really important. I just love to see our future, that they're doing so well. But I also would like this opportunity to be given to every kid. It doesn't have to be just because they have a background of being Hispanics. They have to, they have just a chance. No. I see in my son's classroom, there's a lot of kids, like there's American kids, there are kids from other countries. And I just love to see that. I just love to see how they switch from one language to another. And it's amazing because they're like sponges, they take all, all the good stuff. And to me as a parent, it is really important that we have that dual program. And I know that there's a lot of kids from kindergarten that, they're going to be like 80 kids. I don't know how many they're going to be on the dual programs. But if the parents would like the opportunity to give them their kids, to be bilingual, why not? I know that, there is the opportunity, because when I moved here, when I was 7 years old, of course, I went to my school and nobody speaks Spanish. So as now I see, the classes are in Spanish, and it's just amazing. And I really don't know what I would do if they wouldn't have that here. And I'm really blessed that I live in a place where, I feel welcome. So yeah, I just don't want to be worried or concerned that later on it's going to be, the dual language is not going to exist anymore, or no, I don't want to be worried about that. I just want to be, confident that it's going to be there, that every kid is going to have the opportunity. It doesn't matter where you come from, and they're going to have the opportunity to have a better future, because of course there's going to be a lot more doors for them to open, because, they count as 2. So that's all what I wanted to say, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Brigitte? And for the record, we need a full name.
Je m'appelle Brigitte, je suis la maman d'Ephraim et Presley. Mon Ephraim est à middle school, Presley à King School.
I'm Florence Connor, the French teacher at Martin Luther King, interpreting for a mother of 2 students.
Je m'adresse directement à ce qui concerne à King School. Mon fils aîné, Ephraim, il étudie l'espagnol déjà à middle school. Mais le petit, il est arrivé ici à 6 mois. Maintenant, j'ai les difficultés qui puissent causer avec mes parents à l'étranger. Le problème, c'est quoi? Ils ont peu de temps de français, ils ont juste 45 minutes de français. Le professeur de français, il est obligé de quitter dans 45 minutes, de ramasser tous les enfants dans des classes pour les enseigner. Est-ce que, avec le minimum de 45 minutes, il est impossible que l'enfant puisse quand même garder le français parce qu'ils ont tout le temps à l'école. Ils ont peu de temps à la maison. Le temps de français ne permet pas que nos enfants qui parlent français qui puissent causer avec nos parents qui sont allés au pays en français. C'est moi ce que j'ai comme problème.
So her oldest son is in middle school studying Spanish, and the youngest son is in kindergarten at Martin Luther King studying French. And they only have 45 minutes of French per day, and that includes the time when they're being picked up at their classroom and delivered back to their classroom. And so he came here at 6 months old, and he's not learning enough French to be able to communicate with her family back home.
Ce sera vraiment mon problème. Si vous pouvez nous aider à augmenter quand même le temps pour que nos enfants gardent quand même leur langue. Ce n'est pas seulement pour nos enfants qui viennent de l'Afrique, mais c'est pour tous les autres, comme les enfants qui parlent espagnol, les enfants qui parlent français. Ils peuvent aussi être intéressants, ils peuvent s'intéresser à parler aussi le français, parce que le français n'est pas seulement pour l'Afrique, il est déjà maintenant partout. Parce que nous voyons aussi les gens qui viennent, qui quittent ici, qui vont en France, qui ont besoin quand même de parler le français. Ça va quand même aider la communauté tout entière, c'est ce que je veux dire.
That it would not benefit only the African children speaking French at home, but also American children and other foreign children who would want to go out and live in other French-speaking countries all over the world.
Ok, je vous dis merci pour cette opportunité. J'attendais ça, j'avais vraiment beaucoup de patience de voir avec qui je peux m'exprimer pour qu'on voie au moins le programme de français pour nos enfants.
She thanks you for the opportunity to speak today, and she was really impatient to be able to have that opportunity.
Steve Thompson.
My name is Stephen Thompson, and I am a junior at Urbana High School. I have attended the Urbana School District all my life, and my mother was a USD 116 employee for 5 years. Out of all the years I've been here, I've never felt so empty-hearted, lost, and frustrated as I do right now about this ill-advised decision to replace 6 deans and refer them as punitive. As a student, the way this was brought to our attention makes me lose trust in the school board. I have always felt that trust is important in the school district overall operations. When saying punitive, you are referring to them as people who only inflict punishment. While this is an aspect of their job, I have not found that word to be 100% accurate when describing the deans. When dealing with disciplinary actions, the deans take time to sit down with students who have a conflict and resolve it without suspension or in-school suspension. The deans are more than just deans. These are role models for students, and they are very instrumental in the lives of students. The deans have dedicated their lives to come to support, to protect us, even put their lives in danger if necessary. Without deans, I might not be the student that I am today. And getting rid of them puts the development of other students in jeopardy. I hope I can regain trust in our school board. However, the outcome of this decision will have a consequence. I really hope that you as a school board take the opinion of students like me who use deans as a resource every day into consideration when making your final decision. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board? And while we have that opportunity, At the beginning, I failed to recognize Steve for running the cameras for us tonight so that the folks at home could watch us. Does anyone else wish to address the board this evening? Seeing no one moving forward, I just want to make it clear that this matter that most people talked about tonight is the DL program is on the agenda this evening, but the dean situation is not on the agenda this evening. So just so that everyone's clear about that. We have already announced that we will have, I do want to thank everyone for addressing the board. And in addition to the oral testimony, please be aware that I have somewhere around 70 letters at home so far on this matter. And so all board members are being are paying close attention to the input that we are receiving. We do have a call for an exec. We do have a call for an exec session after this evening's agenda for the purpose of discussing specific personnel issues. There will be no action afterwards. And so at this point in time, a motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
So moved.
As amended, as amended.
As amended.
Okay. There are no common date. If you wish to remain and listen to the board, you are certainly welcome to, but this is an opportune time. We'll take about a 2 or 3 minute break so that people can clear the room if they so desire. But you're certainly welcome to stay and listen. Absolutely.
I'll use the opportunity to have one of my chocolate candy bars. Yeah. Stretch you back. White chocolate.
Oh yeah. Just it stiffens up a lot. There's not a lot of pain, but it's just but no, feeling very good. So.
Hello. Oh, I didn't know it was white chocolate. Another month, really, but you're walking pretty well.
Yeah.
Right? Good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that beats not walking, huh? Okay.
Read through all of them, some of them twice. Took notes. That's important.
Oh,
I mean, it's, that's okay. I'm not afraid.
No.
She's keeping me honest there.
That's good.
Okay, let's go ahead and reconvene, folks. I'd like to reconvene, and I guess I failed to vote on that motion to approve this evening's agenda. So I failed to call for a vote. So all in favor of the approval of the agenda as amended, please say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We have no commendations or recognitions tonight, no policy review, no communications. But we do have one report, which is 10.02 dual language update thought exchange survey results. And I'm hoping we're about ready to go. And Lori, as soon as you get that working, we'll
Oh, that's funny.
oh,
Okay.
Yeah, oh, yeah, but then the people can get copies or.
Until it reboots, yes. You're looking at this one that says dual language.
Yeah. And there might be other.
Not this one.
Not this one.
We're going to use both of them.
Yes.
That one, yeah, the one with the white.
Okay. And how about?
is somebody going to continue to work on the computer along the time,
Yeah.
while we're going?
They're just going to switch out.
And there might be more copies out there if people wanted to have a hard copy. I mean, there were several.
I'm worried about the people at home
Oh, at home.
being able to follow.
Yeah.
Joe, we can take a few minutes if you're switching out computers. Let's take a few minutes. Okay. I'll tell you what, while you're working on that, let's handle the consent agenda. And so you can be ready to go. So we'll return to 10.02 as soon as the technology catches up to us. This evening, we also have action items. We have a consent agenda that includes the following items. Minutes for the February 20th, 2018 business meeting and the March 6th study session. We have February bills and checks. We have no interfund loans this evening. We have a series of personnel items that are routine. As far as I could tell, they were all routine, all right. Renewal of IHSA membership, the list of summer 2018 working cash projects that was reviewed at our study session, and a resolution authorizing the copier lease purchase agreement. Anyone wish to remove any of those items from the consent agenda? If not, a motion to approve the consent agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Sorry. Boy, I'm just not on top of it tonight. Excuse me. Roll call.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes. Vice President Rollins?
Yes.
nay. President Demmett?
Yes. We're still working on technology, so we'll give you your. They say they're ready. I would go through the individual action items if you.
No,
Yeah.
We're ready.
They just need to plug in.
As Lupe is plugging in here, if this is the right one. Go ahead and continue.
As long as
Just
we
the
get
wrong-
it on the
That's
screen.
the wrong adapter.
Keep
No.
going.
While we're getting it on the screen, let's go ahead and handle some of our individual action items. We have 12.01 gifts. Lori Mestry of Urbana donated an alto saxophone, flute, and clarinet to the USD band program. Donation was valued at $3,500. And I believe that's the Urbana High School Life Skills Program received an anonymous donation of a range and a range hood valued at $431.71. Motion to accept those gifts and send letters of thank you would be in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We are there. So we'll continue with 12.02 on our individual action items after our presentation.
See how fast we are?
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So we want to start by just acknowledging the number of families and staff members from our dual language bilingual program that are here tonight. So if you're back there, you can just wave and say hello. So thank you for coming tonight. We're going to split this into two types down the middle. Lupe's going to start, and then I'll finish this off.
I'm going to apologize a little bit for my coughing. On occasion, I'm getting over a cold. We're going to go ahead and start this presentation, just giving you an overview of what our objectives are of the presentation. So the first one being to provide you and the broader community with a brief overview and a reminder of what our requirements are of having bilingual education for the state of Illinois. as well as giving you a brief overview of the current dual language program, highlighting specifically some areas of success that we are having, as well as areas of improvement, including some database evidence. We'd also like to provide you with some rationale for why now is the time for expansion in both Spanish and French, based on some of the current enrollment trends that we have, as well as giving you an overview of the recent thought exchange survey results. As you'll see in the results, option A is an option that we will no longer be considering per these preliminary results that Dr. Wimelt will get into a little bit more later in the presentation. We'd also like to end our presentation by giving you some recommendations and some next steps. So per the state of Illinois, we do have certain requirements that we must follow for our English language learners, specifically being any school site that has 20 or more English language learners who speak the same native language must provide at a minimum a transitional bilingual education model. This model is a full-time program where our ELL students receive all subjects from a bilingually licensed teacher across English and the native language. This allows for self-contained or a pull-out program. However, dual language is what we have selected in this district to meet these requirements because that is the best possible model based on research. In our district, we are currently required to have at least a transitional model. At early childhood for Spanish, we are very close to the number 20 of our French-speaking students at early childhood. At Dr. King for our French-speaking students as well as our Mandarin-speaking students. At Lille for our Spanish-speaking students. At Dr. Williams for our Spanish-speaking students. At the middle school for our Spanish-speaking students, as well as French is very close to the number 20. At the high school for our Spanish-speaking students, as well as French is very close to the number 20. So as we look at the rationale for expanding Spanish specifically, currently K through 5, we have 385 students that are enrolled in our dual language program. And that number is just projected to increase. For next year, we anticipate having the largest number of incoming kindergarten students who speak Spanish that we have ever had. At early childhood alone, we have 48 students that identify Spanish as their language. This is not even counting the number of students that we typically get at centralized registration and Kindergarten Connection that are at centers in the community that we don't necessarily know about until they come to register. Previously, the largest group that we had ever had been about 35, 37 students. That group is now currently our 5th grade class. Waitlists every year have existed from our English monolingual families at both schools. Some of the families that are on that wait list are also families that petition to dual language. However, that number is pretty steady, that we have that many families that are interested in our programs. Some of the larger classes at Dr. Williams and at Lille have also prompted us to consider expanding. Our classes are among some of the largest in the district, especially at our at Lille, at our site at Lille. So for next year, we do need to consider how we're going to serve this large group of kindergarten students. Based on the current numbers, we are looking at needing at least 4 kindergarten classrooms. Currently, we only have 3 between both buildings. So these are just some student enrollment trends and projections for our Spanish-English dual language classroom. As you can see, specifically in the column as it relates to pre-K, we have had pretty steady numbers for the past few years. Next year is our largest number. And as you can see, the number of classrooms that we have had has increased over time. This year we have 16. Next year, because of the necessity to have that additional kindergarten, we will be looking at least 17, ideally more if we're able to expand some of those intermediate classes to help reduce the class sizes. Because of the large class sizes, all of our classrooms currently have class size adjustment TAs per requirement through ISB. One of the requirements that we have through our program is that our classes need to be 90% of the grade level average at that building. So all of our classes are currently exceeding that, therefore warranting a class size adjustment TA for at least 3 hours a day. So some of the demographics of our current program, as you can see, the racial demographics, 64% identify as Hispanic Latino, 18 identify as white, 11 identify as black, 5 as multiracial, 1% identify as Asian, and 1% as Native American. Linguistically, 65% identify as Spanish spoken in the home, 31% identify as English spoken in the home, and 4% identify as a different language spoken in the home. We do have some families that are choosing dual language as their third or fourth language. As far as free and reduced lunch, the program overall is about 73% that qualify for free and reduced lunch, which mirrors the district percentage, as well as 45% are ELL, and 14% of our students have IEPs. We are an inclusive program. And this is the same information visually, if you would like to see that. And feel free to stop us if you have any questions as we go through the data. Our current program design at the different grade levels is a 90-10 model. We, at kindergarten, spend 90% of the day instructing in Spanish and 10% of the day in English. That 10% is typically when the students go to library or to fine arts or PE or dance and drama. So our rationale for French DL expansion.
I think it's important to note that the graph changes over time.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yes, so every year that model does decrease the percentage of Spanish by 10% and switches that 10% over to English until we get to 4th and 5th grade, where our model is 50% of the day in Spanish and 50% of the day in English. Yeah, currently we have this model through 7th grade. Next year, we are hoping to add more courses. We do currently, and Joe will speak a little bit more about the middle school later, we do currently have children already enrolled that were Spanish, that have gone through the program and Spanish was not their first language, enrolled in some of these classes, content area classes that are taught in Spanish, and they are being very successful. So as we look at the rationale for French DL expansion, as you can see, overall, our numbers of French-speaking students has increased dramatically over the past 8 years. Currently, as you heard earlier from a parent, the current model that we're using for French is only really allowing the students about 45 minutes at the most of native language instruction, which, as many of you knowing, taking a foreign language or taking a class, sometimes even in your first language, makes it very challenging when you only have instruction for a very limited amount of time. Because we know that it is best practice to increase the amount of instructional time, and doing so through a dual language model is the best instructional model for our students, we would rather move towards a dual language model rather than a transitional model as we begin planning for the expansion. As you heard from one of our parents tonight, there are French-speaking parents are very interested in French dual language for their children. We had a parent meeting with our French-speaking parents at Dr. King about a month ago, and we had between 20 and 25 parents show up, and all of them were overwhelmingly in support of more French instruction for their children for a variety of reasons, many of which just so that they can communicate and build that connection with their children and with their extended families. The wait list from English monolingual families at both schools, from other schools for Spanish English, gives us the information that makes us believe that providing French would give us more opportunities for families to learn additional languages, which you have also heard tonight from some of our parents, that giving this opportunity to more families in the district is something that would be a tremendous goal for us as a district. And again, as I had mentioned earlier, the wait list for families in our Spanish English program has been about 20.
Okay, my turn. So when we met with you last time, we were embarking on a thought exchange survey to gather more feedback and more data from the community, from our teachers and faculty, as well as parents, the broader community, and our teachers and faculty. So the thought exchange survey, there is a more in-depth presentation here that I'll switch over to in a minute if we need. But I have the highlights in this presentation, and so we can go back and forth as needed, as preferred. But there were 599 participants in the survey that actually signed in and participated in some shape or form. If you remember that type of survey, that's a large number, first of all. That's a really big number for a survey that we give across Urbana schools. With those 599 people, they completed 1,187 thoughts. So remember that they were provided option A, option B, option C, and were asked to give their thoughts and feedback on each option. And so there were over 1,000 thoughts shared. And then you could go back in after providing your thoughts and star different thoughts that were already there, from anywhere from 1 star, meaning you do not like that comment, you don't agree with that comment, to 5 stars, which is highly in favor and support that comment. And so we had almost 20,000 stars rated across those thoughts. So a very comprehensive survey that went out to preschool through 5th grade staff, and then the entire community could participate as well. As a reminder, we provided 3 options as a way to expand, and we really wanted to open it up to options and ideas. So option A was consolidating the Spanish-English dual language program into just 1 school and redistricting non-dual language students and families out. That was option A, similar to what they do in Champaign School District. Option B was maintaining the programs where they're at, but using the space in those schools differently, meaning looking at classrooms that weren't being used and using those for dual language, or looking at restructuring classrooms or spaces based on the different teachers across the school, or looking at possible redistricting to create space. And option C was building from the current 2 schools and starting dual language in a 3rd school, which was pretty open. It was open to the conversation about that could be Spanish or that could be French, but this is just a 3rd option, a way to expand. So as part of this survey, we went to every staff and to many of the PTA meetings and presented a general overview of what we're looking at and the reasons behind it. We got lots of questions, lots of feedback. We visited some PTAs or some parent groups twice. After they asked us questions, we came back with more information. And so we've been providing lots of ongoing information for families because we wanted as much participation as possible. And so with that, as Lupe mentioned at the very beginning, option A was overwhelmingly a bad idea, according to our broader community. And so that was also one of the scariest ones in terms of people worried about that, and for a variety of reasons, which there's more detail in this PowerPoint as to what their thoughts were. Concerns with issues of segregation, concerns with issues of mass movement of people, students and teachers included, and concerns that that's the wrong direction we should go as a district committed to diversity and equity. Also, there was a small group of folks that supported that idea. And so you can see there that each of these options had those who supported and those that were against each option. It was just that the majority of people that commented on option A were not in favor of it. And option B and C were both viable options according to our feedback. If we were to look based on the data, option C is the most favored option of the broader community. Based on the preliminary data, we wanted to just remove option A as an option because we think option B and or C is our route to expansion. When we created this PowerPoint, we said a more detailed report was coming. Well, that's this, as well as the Thought Exchange group is creating a website where they're going to have a much more interactive tool to really break down the different options, the different stars. But you can see within it, can't remember, I'll just highlight a couple things, slide or page. Let me find the right page. With the additional analysis slides, I just want to highlight, I can switch over if you think I need to. No. The number of participants that took the survey that were interested in French, I want to highlight that. That there were Lille and Yankee Ridge were the 2 schools that expressed the most interest in French, coming to their school or being in their school, as well as moderate interest from Dr. King Elementary School and the broader school district, right? The rest you can see there. But I wanted to emphasize that, as well as the next page, which was folks considered option B and C as viable options. C was probably the most preferred due to providing more opportunities for neighborhood schools to have access to dual language, as well as less amount of movement of people. Although with further discussion, and as we will get to later tonight in terms of recommendations and next steps, I think it would be wise for us to wait to see what Kindergarten Connection tells us and additional data before we say option B or option C or both. We still can get more data from there. We may have families that say, no, of the 48 that are coming, we may get 10 of them that say, no, we're not interested in dual language. That's not the trend. The trend is that we get 10 that we didn't even know about come in on top of that. But it would be wise to wait until April to come back and then discuss option B or C. But before we do that, we've had a lot of questions from the broader community about, before we expand, can we have a better understanding of how the program is operating? What are the success rates? What's going on? To be an informed citizen and an informed staff member. So we've put together more slides. We want to highlight our current teacher and personnel demographics and our staff because it's pretty impressive to see a lot of these numbers. One of them being the number of staff that are a part of our program. When I started in this role 9 years ago, there were less than 10 people in the program, and now it's over 30 working in the program. And that's exciting. We have bilingual licensed staff in classrooms, as interventionists, as social workers, as psychologists, et cetera. And that's something that for a smaller district is pretty impressive that I want to highlight. Additionally, we also want to highlight the fact that our teaching staff very closely mirrors our students in a variety of ways, racially, ethnically, linguistically, and this is one of the few areas in our district where our staff matches pretty closely to our student demographics and our family demographics, which we highlight that as a success as well. We highlight that as a strength. Data points for program evaluation. This is always fun to talk about, and anytime you provide data, you want to unpack it a little bit. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of feedback on this. So looking at literacy, by literacy assessments, we wanted to take the end of last year's data, so this is last year, kindergarten through 5th grade, and look at how students were doing across language and literacy assessments in both Spanish and English in comparison to monolingual students in monolingual classrooms. And as you can see broken down here, we have the first row is kindergarten through 2nd grade averages, 3rd through 5th grade averages is the middle row, and then a K through 5 average. And what we're seeing is that our dual language classrooms, our students are on par or above average than the district average in the current 2 schools they're at, as well as the district. That last column is pretty similar to the district average in general in terms of the number of students on target, on benchmark, to the literacy goals that we have established for them. And you can see in some areas the dual language classrooms are outperforming by significantly. And so we want to highlight that we want those numbers to be 100% in every single column. So we'll say that. But to see that students are on average 60% or higher in English or Spanish meeting benchmark. 60% of our dual language students are meeting benchmark in both languages as early as kindergarten is really impressive and something we want to build upon moving forward. Does that make sense, what is presented here? The kids are blowing us away with what they're doing. And what we found interesting here was, although we have a 90-10 program where 90% of the day students are learning in Spanish at kindergarten, look how strong their English is, right? And actually, it's the opposite of what I would have thought. The older groups last year were stronger in their Spanish literacy than they were in their English literacy, and it switched at K through 2, so we're exploring what that means. But at both ends, we're seeing more than half on track, which is what we want to see. And we also know that bilingualism takes time, so it'll be interesting to see this group in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade on other assessments moving forward. Because we know it takes, most research tells us 5 to 7 years to really have enough time to reach proficiency in a language. But we're seeing some good things. So a little bit about the middle school. Lupe mentioned earlier, we have 3 classroom dual language teachers, and we have some additional staff across the school on teams. It continues the 50-50 model through 7th grade right now. The very first group we started with way back in 2012-13 were first graders. That's the group that's 6th graders. The group that year that were 2nd graders, it was the old model of transitional bilingual of all students who spoke Spanish at home. That group is 7th grade, but they've had the same program design all the way through linguistically. But having students from English monolingual homes started the group after them. Does that make sense? So the language design has been the same for them. So it's a 50-50 model at the middle school. So they have about half their day in English and about half their day in Spanish. And we're seeing that students are continuing in the program. About 95% of the students continued from 5th grade to 6th grade. And 100% of them chose at least one Spanish class. No students really said no more Spanish for me, which was a good thing. Middle school dual language programs don't exist really in the country. Elementary is more common. Middle school is very uncommon. High school, I only know of like one, literally. And so that's our vision. That's where we want to go. Just want to highlight the work that our family coordinators and our staff does in terms of family outreach. We have a lot of family members here tonight that shows the connection and the collaboration that we see between our staff and our families. We do a variety of things. The dual language parent meetings 4 times a year, minimally. Science and supper night monthly. That's been a collaborative effort with scholars from the U of I, students from SACNAS, the Society for the Advancement of Chicano, Chicana, and Native American Students. Felipe, who's back here, has been, and maybe some other parents I might be missing, have been very involved in helping us do that. We've received grants. They've worked with grants on campus to provide this monthly opportunity to do science experiments in Spanish with leading scholars in the field who speak Spanish as well, like Felipe. And the students are doing ongoing science activities and experiments every month. And the parents are too. And the parents are being asked to do it in Spanish as well, every parent. And so it's really been a fun event. We also eat pizza, which is nice. So variety of family coordinator activities, social media outlets. Lucia, Noemi, and Luisana do an amazing job in family engagement. And we're very proud of that work. One of the things that we want to incorporate more of, some of the feedback we've received from our community, is to have more formal opportunities for parent feedback as a part of program evaluation. Like, what has your experience been? What are the strengths? What have you enjoyed? What are the areas of improvement? So we've done that kind of informally through meetings and through conversations, but we want to formalize a process. And we have a survey ready that we're going to have ready on parent-teacher conferences this week, paper, pencil, and one that's sent out. And we can provide that feedback when we come back in April to talk to the board. Ongoing areas of improvement, professional development, as it relates to equity in dual language education, as it relates to understanding bilingualism and biliteracy within our dual language classrooms and outside of them, the broader schools in which we operate, understanding how recruitment and retention operates. One of the things we want to highlight is our recruitment and retention efforts have drastically increased and improved. Remember, it's always a question, how are we going to find enough bilingual teachers? And it was a struggle in the past, and it's become, in comparison to years 1 through 3 to years 4 through 6, we've already hired 5 bilingual staff already for next year, and it just became March. We have people wanting to come to us, wanting to work for us. We did have the agreement with Spain at the very beginning, and that we did that for 2 years. We no longer do that for a variety of reasons, but one of them being we don't need to, because we have a variety of quality candidates locally who are bilingual as well. Continue collaboration and understanding across the district about the goals of bilingualism, the goals of biliteracy, and continue development of the programs up and now out in terms of other schools. So our last slide is recommendations and next steps. Definitely do not recommend pursuing one dual language school. We want to monitor the enrollment applications and the enrollment of students coming at Kindergarten Connection who speak Spanish, the number of families that apply in who are monolingual English speakers or non-Spanish speakers, and explore a combination of option B and C as it fits, as it works, as the needs are there. So if we see the needs are at kindergarten and 4th grade at one particular school, then let's explore B and C with that. It's easier to start a third school with kindergarten, not with fourth grade, right? So we would need to look flexibly at those two options based on our student demographics and our needs. And our biggest recommendation is to be open to that flexibility as we move forward. We want to focus on the minimal amount of movement of people possible, meaning not do option A, and if it is option B, do it in a way that does not require movement of staff or families as much as possible, or as minimally as possible. Let me make sure and say that correctly. We do want to, like we did with Spanish, form some working groups, advisory groups for French to explore what the French dual language model would look like, what it could look like in terms of materials, curriculum, program design, etc. We'd like to come back in April with even more recommendations and next steps, but we definitely want to really consider French in fall of 18. We really want that go-ahead to explore through a dual language advisory committee tonight. So that doesn't mean anything other than, yes, keep pushing it, and we'll explore it with our community and advisory group moving forward. The rest of the slides are frequently asked questions. We're not going to go into those unless there's one that is a question you have that you want more information on. But we wanted to provide these because these are the questions we oftentimes get that we've got in the last 2 weeks. And so we've wanted to put them on this presentation to explore that further if there are further questions. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, yeah.
Any questions for the team?
Fantastic presentation. I consider this program to be one of the crown jewels of the district. You guys are doing a great job. Was wondering, have you seen any drop-off in terms of language retention among English language learners when they come back to school in the fall? And if that's the case, have you considered doing any sort of summer enrichment programs at all?
So we have done a little bit of that through Splash. Last year, I know for sure there was a summer, was it 3 or 4 weeks through Splash from Dr. Williams' grant that allowed some continuation over the summer. And so to answer your question, yes, we do see some drop-off over the summer, and those extension opportunities in the summer are helpful and beneficial. I think it would be important to keep considering how we can use Splash, 21st Century Learning, I say Splash, it's 21st Century Learning grants to have those summer enrichment opportunities. I would love to keep exploring that. Yep.
I would add that the summer reading loss that we've seen has not been, I would say, more so than any child who may have some summer reading loss in the summer. But what we are finding is that once the kids get back into their routines and get back with their bilingual peers, that they tend to get back into the flow of things pretty quickly. I will say many of our teachers do a lot as far as sending home projects and communicating with their kids over the summer, some through text, some through different apps, some through sending home books and extra materials so that the kids do get that extra support over the summer as well.
Peggy?
Can I ask, do we know the 599 survey participants, who they represented? I mean, were they teachers, parents, community? Maybe you had it in here, but, or maybe you just know it.
Let me see if it was on this PowerPoint that they sent us. I know that the majority of participants were from Leal and Yankee Ridge. I don't know if that was staff or parents, like the breakdown of that.
Yeah.
But we can get that before April.
Yeah, I was just curious, or a community, I mean, it could be, because I know, right.
And community.
Yeah.
So it was Leal, Yankee Ridge, and community.
Yeah.
That were the most active in the thought exchange.
Right, and then within the schools, whether it was.
Yeah, if it was
Okay.
staff or,
I was just
yeah.
curious.
I'll ask for that detail
Okay.
from them.
And all, similarly in the, and maybe it's the same answer, the French, those who expressed an interest in French, do they represent parents or staff or
Okay.
community?
Disaggregate that out a little bit more.
Well, I think would help me know where the
Let me
support's
double
coming
check.
from.
I don't think it said
It just
they were
said-
parents or staff.
It didn't, it just said,
It just gave the total number of the school.
on
right?
the slide you gave us, yeah. Okay.
Where'd that go? So we'll
If
get
that's
that
easy to
from-
do, that would be helpful.
Yep, we can get that.
And just the last question, are you pretty confident about, it's exciting to think about offering French dual language. Are you as confident about hiring French bilingual teachers as you are about Spanish? I know that pool has really filled up the Spanish bilingual teachers, but do you feel pretty confident about French bilingual teachers, access to those as well?
So this year, we have been very fortunate to hire numerous French
Ah.
and sometimes trilingual staff into our district, either as TAs. Madame Florence, who I believe is in the back, we were very fortunate to hire. She is trilingual as well and has been serving as our bilingual teacher.
Okay.
Currently, we are heavily recruiting within the community. We have had the U of I reach out to us as far as partnering with them as well to provide some support there as well. The French department has been very interested in working with us as well. So I'm confident that we, will be able to continue to recruit and seek out and really work hard. We have also spoken with Miss Vida, who is the parent coordinator, the French parent coordinator at early childhood, and is she still in?
Yeah, she's in the back.
She sent us names already.
Yes, and she has already emailed us names of people in the community that she is affiliated with that want to work in our district. So we are going to work with her to help these community members go through the process and potentially go through our Grow Your Own program.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I just want to say, internally, you gave us all that data about what the kids are doing, but I see it externally too, because a lot of times, anytime you see a second and third grader interpreting for their parents and also teaching their parents how to speak, that shows a positive input what we're doing in the schools. So I've seen that about, maybe about 6 occasions. So keep that up, because not only are you reaching the kids, you're reaching their parents. That's enabling them to get jobs and also to be able to advocate for themselves and their children within the community.
Yeah, thank you. I will say, my two oldest sons, I have a 3-year-old at home who's coming in the future. Watch out for that one. But they are doing some really amazing things with Spanish. In fact, my son is writing. He writes a lot in 3rd grade, dual language, and he was asking me how to write a particular sentence or phrase, and I had no idea, and he figured it out on his own. And I'm like, I don't even know that word.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's pretty impressive what they're doing.
I have a question about the family selection of languages. What have you seen in terms of, are there families who don't care whether their kids get French or Spanish instruction just so long as they get something? Or do you find that what's driving that is either the neighborhood they live in, if they live in the Lille neighborhood, they automatically hear about the Spanish program, so they want to continue with it, or if they're native speakers of either language? I'm just wondering, I would love to see the French program expand too, and I would love to see everybody take advantage, but how do they decide which one they want to go with?
So our current model for French is a transitional model, which is only offered to students who have French as one of their native languages. So an English-speaking family does not currently have the option to participate in French. So, which is why most of our predominantly English-speaking applicants choose Spanish, because that's really their only option. We do have one family who French is one of their languages, but they did choose to participate in French, and in the Spanish dual language program, but they would have attended that school anyway.
But I think what we're going to see is that for a monolingual English-speaking family, I think it's going to be all of the above. I think there's going to be families that say, I'm open to either, just whatever I can get. And there's some that really want Spanish or really want French for particular reasons. I don't have a specific number in mind, like percentage, but I think we're going to see all of the above. I think bilingualism, multilingualism is just more and more valued in general, and more families want to be a part of that.
Are you going to send out surveys or something like that as, let's say, if we rolled out the dual language, change from transitional French to dual language French, would you be sending out parent surveys periodically to test the waters to see what people want?
Sure.
If
yeah,
that,
I think that's a good idea.
Because I'm thinking, people who live in different neighborhoods, because it's neighborhood-based schools, that could raise a lot of questions about transportation and things like that if they live in different, different neighborhoods. I'm sure we could come to a solution for it, but I wouldn't let that be a setback. But yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, further questions? Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good report.
Thank you.
We'll hear from you then at the study session in April or at the business meeting in April?
One or the other.
When will you have the April information that you need?
We will get the parent-teacher conference we'll get the surveys back from parent-teacher conferences. The bulk of it's going to be on site at parent-teacher conferences Thursday and Friday.
Oh.
And then
This
we can
Thursday
get-
and Friday.
This Thursday and Friday. We can get the thought exchange details back pretty quickly from thought exchange folks, so we could do it as.
Well, Kindergarten
Kindergarten
Connections is April
Thank you.
3rd.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that
Yeah.
is the
drive it.
hinge, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of the things that we need to wait for, so.
So it'll be our business meeting.
It'll
Business
probably
meeting.
be the business meeting in April, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Good, I think I'll be here for that.
Okay, let's return to the individual action items. We were ready for 12.02. Approval of the resolution authorizing the honorable dismissal and reassignment of full-time educational support personnel. And there are 2 people on this particular list. And so we need a motion to approve and then be prepared. These are all roll call votes.
I move authorization of 12.02.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded for the, basically the riffing of 2 full-time educational support personnel. Roll call.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes with regret. Vice President Rollins-Gay?
Yes.
President Demmett?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I should have opened, this part of this agenda is one of the toughest things we do every year, but when I first got on the school board, this list included, and the staff at that time was probably only 500 versus 800 today. And this list would sometimes be 250, half of our staff, because of grant funding and every other vagary that you could come into in terms of budget. So I appreciate the fact that the district staff administration has worked hard to minimize the numbers on these lists. Makes it no less regrettable, but less disruptive. 12.03, approval of resolution authorizing dismissal of part-time educational support personnel, and I've been informed that there are only 8 on that list and not 9.
Move approval of 12.03.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes with regret. Vice President Rollins-Gay?
Yes.
And President Demmett?
Yes. Next is 12.04, the approval of the resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of a part-time, non-tenured teacher, and there's 1 person on this list.
I move authorization of 12.04.
I'll second
Moved.
that.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes with regret. Vice President
Yes.
Rollins-Gay and President Demmett?
Yes. And I guess we should also note that most of these actions are due to the fact that these are grant-funded positions. 12.05, approval of resolution authorizing non-reemployment of full-time, non-tenured teachers not in the last year of probationary service. There are 2 individuals on this list.
Move approval of 12.05.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes with regret. Vice President Rollins-Gay?
Yes.
And President Demmett?
Yes, motion's carried. We are ready for 12.06, which is a resolution authorizing and directing the sale or disposal of personal property. And these are some library books, an old copier, and some old AV equipment that probably you couldn't even find repair parts for them anymore. Is there a motion?
I move to approve 12.06.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes with regret. Vice President Rollins-Gay?
Yes.
And President Demmett?
Yes, and I'm sorry, we probably could have handled that with voice vote.
Yeah.
Freedom of information requests completed?
Yes, I'll go through those fairly quickly. We did have several this past month, and we're working on several right now, but the ones that we've completed include the Illinois News Network, an itemized listing of all expenses related to the 2017 Illinois Association of School Boards Conference held November 17th through 19th, 2017. I believe many people saw an article in the News Gazette about that. There was a Smart Procure, produced a FOIA for any and all purchasing records from September 6, 2017 to the present. The Illinois Retired Teachers Association requested the name and email addresses of all teachers and administrators who are retiring in 2018. An individual, Jacqueline Cesa Onvia, requested the contract award information regarding a 6-warmer proofer cabinet, 1 half-size combi oven, and 1 double convection oven that is gas. And then the Prairie State Wire, Jim Tyrell, requested and received information related to data for all employees of Urbana School District 116 represented by the Organized Labor Collective Bargaining Unit. So, keeps us busy, but that's part of the process.
Okay. Do we have a superintendent's report in addition to that?
I'd just like to add one thing, and that is over the past week or so, my team and I have been around visiting middle school and high school, and one of the opportunities that provided me, and actually several members of my team, was sitting in on a dual language class at Urbana Middle School that was, luckily for me, a history lesson on the amendments to the Constitution of the United States, which was a lesson that I used to teach. And it was a pre-writing activity, and while it was all done in Spanish, it was exciting. I was pleased to be there. The teacher even found me a chair with wheels so I could scoot around the room and talk to the students. The students were nice enough to give me some Spanish pointers about the amendments that they were looking at. So I will say that as a former history teacher at Urbana Middle School, it was exciting for me to see a group of 7th graders engaged in such a lively discussion about the importance of the Bill of Rights and all of the amendments to the Constitution in Spanish. So it was great. It was a great lesson, and I enjoyed being there.
Is that it? Yep. Okay. Board reports this evening?
I just want to mention that I'm going to be out of town visiting family in California, and I'm leaving Monday, and I won't return till April 4th, so I regrettably will miss April 3rd's board meeting, and I just wanted to let people here know and those listening know that that's the case.
Okay. Any other board reports? I just simply want to note, as I did at the close of public session, that a substantial number of letters, phone calls, and personal contacts, and voluminous reading. So, appreciate the input. With that, I think a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purposes of discussing a specific, the clause, the performance of a specific staff person. Performance or evaluation of a specific personnel. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would remind everyone there'll be no action afterwards. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried.